Hello, everyone. Welcome to IGN Overclocked, Episode 7 for September 23rd.
Doot, 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 doot.
I am Dan Stapleton. This over here is Jared Petty.
Hi.
And this is Tal Blevins.
I'm Tal Blevins with a very strange name.
I like that Muppet News Flash thing you had going on. That's like, hi-ho.
That's kind of what I was going for.
Yeah, it was pretty good. So.
Well, guys, since last we met, Tal was here last week. Jared, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I like being here. This is really exciting.
But since last we met on Overclocked, literally 74 games have come out on Steam. That includes...
The beauty of PC gaming. You can never get bored.
Yeah.
That includes such wondrous games as Toilet Tycoon.
Oh, there we are. I somehow missed that release.
Gaben, The Final Decision. That's about Gabe
That's in Gabe Newell, yes.
Okay.
The only.
Yeah. Gamer Simulator, Bloodlust Shadowhunter, League of Mermaids.
I actually kind of want to play League of Mermaids.
Shadow Ninja Apocalypse.
Whoa.
Wolf Blaster, and Galactic Hitman.
Shadow Ninja Apocalypse sounds like something that like 3D Realms would have released in '92. I think that sounds actually kind of fantastic.
Now, I will say, like, I'm not passing judgment on any of these games. I haven't tried them. Actually, I believe it was Bloodlust Shadowhunter has a good rep on Steam. It's apparently a homage to Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines.
Oh, cool.
But, looked a little bit low budget, but not necessarily a bad game.
What rank was Toilet Tycoon on Steam? I believe it was number 2, wasn't it, Dan?
Okay.
Hey, yo.
But
that hurt.
There were also some promising games released this week on Steam and elsewhere, including Assault Android Cactus.
Oh,
which
cool.
Cam Shea is working on a review of that. I guess he's traveling at the moment, but as soon as he's back, we'll have that review up. It's a twin stick shooter that he likes a lot. Blood Bowl 2, which is a tactical football fantasy game.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to play the sequel yet, but I played the original back in the, mid-2000s? Late 90s?
When the original Blood Bowl came out?
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Blood Bowl? No, it was late 2000s. Sorry,
It's based
it
on
was
a
like
tabletop.
2008, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I've never played the tabletop either, but I played the original Blood Bowl.
Soma, which is a survival horror game set under the sea with robots.
Okay, so Deep Star 6. Yeah. All right.
Or AI.
Yeah, I
Bioshock.
like. Okay, yeah, I like survival horror games. I do want to give Soma a glance. I've heard some good things.
Yeah, Daniel Krupa really liked it.
Yeah.
We've also got World of Warships, not on Steam, which Rob Zachney reviewed for us. Really likes it. But yeah, so honestly, I haven't tried.
There's
any
no
of
lack
those.
of new things to play.
Yeah.
Where do you fall in the world of games, Dan? Have you played any of them, like Warplanes or Tanks? Warplanes, Tanks, any of those? Yeah.
World of Worlds.
Yeah, the world of something shooting games.
I've played some of a very small amount of each.
Okay.
Like I don't really like grinding very much, but what I've played of World of Warships makes it by far my favorite of the three.
Oh, yeah? I haven't played warships. I've played warplanes and tanks.
Yeah.
I always want to say war tanks because it goes over everything else.
They are warlike.
Yeah.
There aren't many non-war tanks. I guess you
Well,
don't
you
need to
think
make
like
that distinction.
Panzerkampfwagen,
Yeah.
that's armored war wagon. So there we go.
It's a war tank. You use it in war.
Yeah.
Well,
There are
non-war
plenty of
tanks.
ships and planes you don't use in war. I think is where the distinction comes from.
Non-war tanks you put fish in.
Yeah, that's true.
you go.
Yeah, okay.
World of Fish Tanks was also I think it was a Steam game released this.
No, that was
right?
that was
sounds
Seaman for the Dreamcast.
It totally sounds like a PC game though. World of Fish Tanks.
Okay, he was trying to tell us something about war. We wouldn't let him.
World of Warships, yes. The reason I like it is I like that slow-paced tactical naval combat with weapon facings and things like that. Like honestly, I remember like Starfleet Command, those games.
Yeah.
Like that's naval combat in space, and those are like the kind of tactical combat I really enjoy. And this is the inspiration for that, which is actual naval combat, where you're managing where your guns are facing. There's like a long delay between like when you fire at a target and when it actually hits. So it's very tactical.
All with your belly button.
Yeah.
Who would have known?
And you have to maneuver your ship to avoid being hit by slowly incoming torpedoes. And so
Yeah, I'm a grognard, so I'm looking forward to this. I really want to see how it came out. I used to play tabletop naval war games, and the
Like
chance
Battleship?
No, not like Battleship. Most of them were house scratch rule stuff. But we use these little metal model miniatures, and you'd spread out blue stuff on top of a ping pong table, and this is boring for everyone.
There was what was the old Microprose game?
Are you thinking of Micropro?
Carrier Command?
Well, there was Harpoon,
Carrier, yeah.
but Harpoon was more of a
Sub-simulator.
no, Harpoon was a strategic operations actions theater game. Like it was more. It wasn't tactical. It was like, hey, you control the whole North Atlantic. But you're thinking of the carrier one. Yeah, that was different. Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
I used to play a lot of sub games. That's a whole other.
Yeah, like 688 Attack Sub. That was more of a sim, though.
Yeah, Sub Battle Simulator. There was Silent Service, all kinds of them.
Yeah.
So those are the games we can play right now.
They had the Red October game.
We are just not going to let Dan talk. Sorry, Dan.
Those are the games we're going to play right now, but the games that we're going to play, or we're not going to be able to play as early as we would like, as the first topic I wanted to bring up today. There have been a lot of delays. I don't know if you guys noticed.
Yeah.
Hey, it always makes for a good Q1 of the next year, though.
It does.
Yeah, October is the new March.
I don't necessarily mind that. I don't mind delays because there is never a problem with having too few games out there, like you just said.
Not these days.
Yeah, not these days. Exactly. There are 70 plus games that came out on Steam just in this past week, and we're not even in necessarily the quote unquote heavy release season quite yet. So.
Yeah, so, you think about what's going on with Tomb Raider and Fallout coming out the same day.
Well, not on PC. Tomb Raider.
No, those are separated on PC. But I think about over in the console space, just like people are just
on PC. You've got Fallout and StarCraft 2: Legacy of the Void on the same day.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so that's November 10th will be a busy day. But I want to go over some of the games that have moved from 2015 to 2016.
Educate us, Dan.
And a few that's moved within 2016. Hitman was announced to come out on December 8th. It's now March 2016.
And again, I think that's actually smart. I think a game that comes out on December 8th especially can easily get overlooked in the holiday season. And I think for a game like Hitman as well, which is usually a good series, but maybe not up to, say, the popularity or the sales numbers that something like a Fallout 4 is going to get, it probably it's probably actually a good idea for it to come out a little bit later.
Yeah, go ahead. I think Hitman is especially a good idea because they have a kind of a wacky plan for this game where they were going to say it's like, oh, we're going to come out with a couple of scenarios and you pay $60, you get a couple of scenarios, and then we'll just add more later, which just sounded like we didn't have enough time to finish. So now they've got more time to at least add some of that stuff. Mm-hmm. I'm sure they'll still have kind of a trickling out of content later, mm-hmm. but this if assuming they were going to put out one a month, this gives them 3 or 4 more pieces of scenarios you can do.
Yeah, delays can be irritating for us, but they're mostly a good thing. They usually keep games from being released half finished like that.
I want to be clear when I'm saying when I'm just talking about delays. I totally agree with you, Tal, that a there's no shortage of games, and B, all of these games will be better as a result. When we finally play them, they will be better than they would be if they come out when they originally said they were. XCOM 2. I'm very much looking forward to that, but mm-hmm. I'm totally okay with it being delayed from November 2015 to February 5th, 2016, because I'm going to be playing a lot of Fallout, and this gives them a little time to breathe. But also, I mean, with a game like that, with all that procedural generation in the maps, and a game that can definitely benefit from a lot of balancing, I'm totally okay with it being pushed back and given a couple more months in the oven. Mighty Number 9. That was originally supposed to be out September 15th. Now it's sometime Q1 2016.
Yeah, exactly.
That's fine. And that's a good place for that again. You don't want it too crowded a season. And the spring's getting crowded. But
that one has been less graceful in the manner in which it's been delayed. Yeah. It's just been kind of fumbling. And it's a homage to Mega Man, or a spiritual successor to Mega Man. Yeah. It's not really uncharted territory. Mm-hmm. It's a platformer. Which not to diminish any of the design work that goes into it, but it's not something that you kind of expect to be delayed a lot.
Well, platform polish, the thing is, I was just listening recently to the Retronauts podcast where they were talking about the development of Super Mario Brothers and how at least one point they really did kind of go back to the drawing board on that. Mm-hmm. And said, this does not work as well as it should. If you hit that point in a platform and you realize this isn't fun and you're going to have to rework some mechanics, then maybe that's what's happening. Maybe they just looked at it and said, this is not good enough for what we want it to be. I'm cool with that.
Entirely possible.
Yeah.
But given that it's a Kickstarted project, delays are disheartening.
Yeah, sure.
Then you go to Need for Speed, the PC version. The rebooted Need for Speed, the PC version was delayed from November 3rd to spring 2016. Which is that's always disappointing to see them delay just the PC version, because that kind of means that's not their priority. But hopefully that extra time means they won't kind of half-ass the port. We've also got Dead Island 2 from 2015 to who knows when.
Yeah, right.
Because that one, they took it away from the developer, which was Jaeger, and gave it to an internal team at Deep Silver. So
it takes a while to unravel everything and put your own claws into it and figure out what's going on.
Who knows? They may be starting from scratch.
Yeah, exactly.
Dead Island 2, a game that may someday exist.
Tom Clancy's The Division from 2014 to 2015 to 2016. It was originally going to come out. I think I wrote down the wrong Tom Clancy date there, but it was originally going to come out this year, and now it's coming out March 8, 2016. Speaking of more Tom Clancy games, Rainbow Six Siege, that is staying within 2015. It went from October went from October 13th to December 1st.
Do you think that's cutting it too close at December 1st?
Personally, I worry about that because any games that are released after Thanksgiving, in between Thanksgiving and the Christmas time period, I feel like there's so much fervor for all the other games that are already out that you kind of lose some of the bang. To me, that's a risky release date. Mm-hmm. I know they want to make the end of the year and they want to make their quarter for that game, but yeah, just that time period in general. At least it's earlier in December and not later in December, which is good. But Thanksgiving is such a big buying weekend for purchases for the holiday. It does make me worry that Rainbow Six may not get the attention of other games out there.
I cannot fathom what it's like to try to produce a video game on 90-day reporting cycles. I just sitting there and having to have something every 3 months to show the investors that. Oh, it scares me to death.
You have to do that every day, Jared. Well, if you don't show me something that you did every day, there's problems.
That's true, but I'm not part of a 600-person collaborative team making a multi-million-dollar video game.
You're part of a collaborative team.
I am part of a collaborative team. It's just
a valued part, Jared.
Value. Oh, thank you. I value you, Dan.
Last one on my list here is Legends of the Sword Coast was delayed just 1 month from September 29th to October 20th.
Is that Legends of the Sword Coast now, not Sword Coast Legends? Did they switch that around?
Did I switch that around?
Last I heard it was still Sword Coast Legends.
Okay.
It might have been changed. It's a D&D game.
Yeah. It's some combination of those words.
Okay, yeah. So, but yeah.
Sword Legend Coast.
Yeah, and that's a short delay, and that's fine. Everybody can wait on that. I am really interested in that game. I've been keeping half an eye on it since they first announced it, and this idea of a human DM'd built-in kind of fool with the players at every twist and turn of the map. Things are going too easy for them. You can throw something right in right there. Things are too difficult. You can scale it back. Sort of like having the AI director from Left 4 Dead, but it's a person. Mm-hmm. I really like the idea of how that would work in a D&D role-playing environment.
Yeah, we've seen games experiment with that. And actually, I think Fable Legends is doing something similar.
It is.
Yeah.
And there was a game from...
the BioWare game, too, they announced... a while ago. Was it Shadow?
Yeah.
Shadow Lord or
Shadow Realm?
What I liked about this one is it seemed to have a built-in system of checks and balances to keep the flow. We don't know if it's going to work, but what they were shooting for was a way to keep the flow of tension just right. Mm-hmm. That affects how resources are allocated to the person building the level, for example. It's really neat. I like what they put into it.
I think there's a game from Paradox called I forget what it's called, but there was a similar thing where you had players playing basically against a dungeon master.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
So do you think any?
So
other
now it's
games?
going to be just as busy as.
Yeah, but I mean, do you think any other games are going to get pushed?
Yeah, I'm not going to say any specific ones because honestly, I mean, it's not like I've seen anything that I've been really oh man, that's going to be up against the wall. But we are always going to. I mean, we're only in September now. We always hear about delays going into to October, so I'm sure there'll be at least something else announced. Now, you do have games like Fallout 4, which are pretty locked in because coming out so late in their development cycle and announcing a date then, it usually means unlike games like The Division, where they've announced a date that was far away, even then when they first announced it. They're pretty. I think the guys at Bethesda are pretty confident that they're going to hit that exact day, or they wouldn't have said it, so close to what that day was and made such a late announcement. So I don't know if I think Tomb Raider is no problem. I think Fallout's going to be no problem. I think StarCraft is going to be no problem. So I think the big ones right now probably pretty much locked in. But of course, I mean, there will still be some delays.
Mm-hmm. What about where do we sit with Star Citizen now and the final scheduling on the different pieces being released?
So I had Star Citizen down here as like delayed, sort of, because that game is just like one giant delay, like a delay in motion
that just sort of rolls over.
It's like the universe; it continually expands, Dan. So there's just new things.
Well, it's a delay and release, delay and release.
Exactly,
I mean, it's a very interesting cycle to watch. But you mentioned that Kickstarter thing earlier, and that's why I asked about Star Citizen.
Yeah, Star Citizen never actually announced a release date.
Right.
The delays that they've experienced have been like in releasing these modules. Like their first person shooter module was put on, I think, indefinite delay.
Mm-hmm.
They just, that wasn't working out quite how they wanted. So they're taking that back and retooling it. Who knows if it'll even be in the final release?
Yeah. Sure.
But when the final release happens, who knows when that will be? I think I think they've said 2016, but certainly no more firm than that. So I would kind of be surprised if it releases like there's like final Star Citizen that is out in 2016.
I do wonder how much strategy goes into that, right? I do wonder if it's a not necessarily a move of the game not being ready to come out yet, just people seeing this fall season right now and going, man, we got to get out of the way of some of these juggernauts. We want to be able to give ourselves some breathing room when it comes to our sales potential on this. But on the other side of that coin, like you want it out for the holiday season a lot of times too, because that's when a lot of the sales for the year are going to be. So, but I wonder how much of it is kind of business motives, and strategy versus say technical issues.
Yeah, I mean, things like Sword Coast Legends or whatever order those.
Yeah, I think it is Sword Coast Legends.
Yeah, when you think about that one, for example, they did say it's like, oh yeah, our feedback from our community said we needed a little bit more polish.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So there are some
good for them.
There are some where it's abundantly clear, and like something like Rainbow Six Siege, it's like they would absolutely have put that out earlier if they could. Mm-hmm. And the Division, they've been delaying that right and left. So that there's something weird going on there that I don't think is entirely related to entirely related to business strategy.
Sure.
I think because usually the best business strategy is like, hey, let's put out a release date and stick to it.
I just want to confirm that Jared is correct. Sword Coast Legends.
Okay, let's check it. You ever read You by Austin Grossman, the novel? I really recommend it, both you guys. It's about a guy that works at a game development studio, and it starts out looking like it's going to be kind of a darkly humorous inside look at game dev, which it is, written by a guy that worked in studios. But then it gradually spirals out into this kind of Tron-esque save the world science fiction. It's a really neat book. But one of the things he touches on in that are the myriad ways that something can quickly snowball from what seems to be incidental within a studio into requiring a project be completely reworked.
Oh, yeah.
I never cease to be impressed by what goes into this and making it happen, and I wonder what happens behind the scenes that we never get to see. We hear things here sometimes, stories we can tell and stories we can't, but I wonder about the great dramas happening behind the walls, the stories behind making games. And you read something like Masters of Doom, it's often as much fun as the game itself.
Well, man, I mean, that's the thing. I don't think, the average consumer, maybe not even, everybody on our side of the world, on the journalist side of the world, really gets what goes into game development. I mean, I certainly don't know everything, but I certainly have been covering this industry for long enough and have known long enough people in it and was actually interested in game development early on, that you're talking about, projects that can take 3, 4, 5, 7, 10 years, in some cases.
14 years.
Depending on the scope of the game. But like to be able to even think about at the concept when you're really laying something out as just an idea, to think about an actual release date at that point, it's just beyond me that you could even append a date at that point to something like
Romero
that.
Thought Romero was going to make Daikatana in less than a year originally, and you look at that design not document, but what he had in mind is like, how would that have even been possible? He thought he had a plan that would work, and it seemed reasonable to somebody at that point. They sent him enough money to do it, and it's strange to think about that. That there was a time that
I still have my invite to the Daikatana launch party.
Wow,
a full 8 months before the game came out.
That's awesome.
They still had that launch party.
Well, speaking of things that do have release dates that we're probably not going to slip. We think the Steam Link and Steam Controller are going to be out on November 10th. Which, also, that's a big day.
Yeah,
November 10th.
Wow.
That keeps popping up. And in preparation for that.
And that's something we haven't, heard a lot about from recently and kind of got delayed and went through its own share of. So it's interesting to see if it's finally here.
Hardware, and the whole Steam OS ecosystem is gonna have its own growing pains. But one thing we've seen in preparation for that is just recently Valve put out a new beta interface for the Steam Big Picture mode. And that's the interface you'll use when you're controlling Steam from your couch. It's not really designed to be used on the desktop, though you can use it. It just takes up the full screen. All the text is really big, so you can read it from far away.
Yeah.
And they've had this for several years, but they just unveiled a new, much nicer interface for it. And Jared and I just did a walkthrough of that. You can find on the site. But
that's cool. I've never used it myself, so yeah.
This is interesting for me because my living room is set up around Big Picture mode. My living room setup is built around my PC, and I use Steam Big Picture mode for half of my gaming, probably. And I've used the old version, which was adequate, but it had a very rough around the edges feeling to it. It had. You ever download a Linux program that's got a mature code base, but where the GUI was added later on? And you kind of like,
and you can tell it was kind of done by an engineer.
Yeah, you can tell it was kind of done by an engineer. While there is some really aesthetically pleasing stuff, that weird ambient underwater feel and stuff to the Steam's TV layout thingamawazi, it's never really felt completely congruent. What Dan and I looked at today looks like, assuming it all works well, looks like a vast step up. It's much smarter use of your screen real estate. There's more on the screen, but it's not happening in a busy or confusing way. So you have more options available to you per screen without it being hard to see or hard to select what you want to select.
Yeah, it kind of at first glance looks like a mishmash of the Xbox One and PS4 UIs, in that it's kind of tile based, but it seems much more intelligently laid out.
I don't necessarily care for either one of those interfaces, though. So.
I don't really either. And I think this is much more intelligently laid out than either of them. There's just it's much more intuitive, easy to get to your settings, easy to get to your games. And it's unlike the PS4 UI, which is just kind of one row of icons. It's much more dense with options on a screen, and they're all presented large and easy to select. And
so it's not like as long as it's not like Windows 10 or Xbox, I just find things kind of hard to find in that kind of setup.
Right. We talked about that. No, it's not quite as hodgepodgey as that. Yeah. It's smarter. You've got about 12, when you're actually in your game library, it's about 12 game tiles per screen.
I'm sorry, I should say Win 8. Win 10 uses some of that, but Win 8 was the one famous for that.
You're right. It's laid out. Yeah, we made that same comparison today, but fortunately, I think that what we saw, it's much more intelligently, it's just more ergonomic. It's more intuitive. You've got a 3x4 grid of games in your library. Your side tiles are all very clearly labeled. They're large enough to see what each of them are supposed to be. They're not too cluttered. I think it'd be easy to use. I use a Microsoft controller in my living room, but I also use a keyboard with a touchpad. Both of those are going to work fine. I was very happy with it.
An important distinction between this and Windows 8 and Windows 10, the touch interface, is that those are designed to be used with a touch UI. This is designed to be used for a controller, which is a very different
touch
approach.
Controller though, Dan.
I guess with the Steam controller is touch based, but it's.
When's the last time you got your hands on the Steam controller?
I haven't used it since they took away the second touchpad.
So me too. I haven't used it since about last year. Actually, I haven't had my hands on it.
Actually, same here. That was the last time I had it.
Okay, so I'm kind of curious because there were some. It was weird. Let me just say that. It was weird when I used it, and it was super early, obviously. I'm curious to see what the refinements have been.
I liked it. I thought it was kind of groovy. I was like, I would need days with it to know for sure, but I liked it.
It'll take some getting used to.
Exactly. Even I had 5 minutes with it, Yeah.
One of the cooler things about the new Steam Big Picture mode, though, is kind of the discovery and reminder aspects of it. When you first start up the main screen, it's much more icon based than it is in the current public one, as opposed to the beta one. Anyone can opt into this, by the way. Where before it just had like the library store community buttons that just are text. Now it's very icon based, but under that it has a big button for resume the game you were just playing. It has one for here's what your friends are playing, a big group of your friends are currently playing, and then it has one for don't forget to play, which is a window for games that you've bought, you own, but have never played.
It's your pile of shame window.
I was going to say, that would be most of my games. That part of my
yeah.
desktop would be huge.
You know, I am
It shows a recent one.
I was it Lucy that did the article about our piles of shame a year ago? I
think so.
I am remarkably disciplined in my Steam purchasing.
Are you?
Guess. Yeah, I mostly play the Steam games I buy. Not all of them, but mostly. But that'd be a welcome icon. Although
I plan to play all the Steam games that I have.
All the best intentions.
But it did today. It was reminding us in the video that we needed to take a shower with our fathers. That was interesting.
Shower with your dad simulator. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, like mine saying, "Oh yeah, you need to play Soma." It's like, okay, yeah, that's true. I do need to do that.
But that actually, I mean, you know, I'll say for me, with a large game library, there's some things I tend to continue to gravitate toward, and that's kind of nice to be able to remind me, yeah, you know what, I really actually do want to play that, so maybe that'll be more of a reason for me to jump in as opposed to me just looking through the same icons that I'm used to seeing, right, or my same list.
Yeah, and I wanted to pop up to me and remind me maybe of things I've just neglected for a long time too. Hey, you loved Osmos. You haven't played that in forever. Go back and do that tonight. You know, that might be fun. Or, it's been a while since you played Audio Surf. Get back in there.
The other thing that I was really impressed by the new UI is the amount of like kind of power user features it gives you access to. In the old one, I'm pretty sure it didn't give you nearly this much access. You can do things like you can adjust the startup launch options. Like if you want to disable startup movies, you can do it from big picture mode. If you want to join betas, you can enter that code in there. You can verify the integrity of a game's cache from big picture mode.
Mm-hmm.
So
and it's all easy to find now too.
Yeah.
All those options are very clearly and easily laid out in places that are logical. You're just like, I bet you that's right. Yep, that's where it is.
Yeah, pretty much everything you can do on the desktop UI you can do from big picture mode now, which is I think a big step up. And you know maybe you could do it. I just didn't know how to do it because it wasn't obvious. So I think it's a big step up, and like I think it is the nicest home console UI that you can put on your TV right now, based on 1 day of tinkering with it.
Well, I'm still a office desk, 28-inch monitor PC gaming kind of guy. Mm-hmm. Maybe this will be the impetus for me to actually bring my PC into the living room and check it out then.
Or plug in a Steam Link on November 10th.
Yeah, I ultimately made that switch over because I wanted to start playing games with my wife, and both of us weren't huddling next to the computer very well, so brought it in there and set it all up, and we cut the cord with cable anyway, and so it made sense to have the PC at the
recently too. So
had the center of the living room, and boy, it has worked out great. It really has. I've been very happy, even with the old versions.
Are you booting directly into it?
Yeah, I boot directly into it now. I mean, I occasionally cut out to the regular Steam interface if I want to do some of that maintenance type stuff you were talking about. And of course, there are some games that only work with mouse and keyboard, and I have a kind of a less elegant solution for that. But that's a whole other long story. But yeah, I boot straight into it and have done so for months, and I'm very happy with it.
Yeah, and I kind of hope that they go back and kind of update the desktop UI with some of the stuff they've got in here, just to have more of the visual language. Because the desktop client is okay. It's very utilitarian, which I have nothing against utilitarian. Don't get me wrong. But could use some nicer a little facelift based on.
Sometimes I do forget where specific options are that in the desktop UI, and I have to kind of hunt and peck around a little bit because it can get a little bulky. I mean, there's a lot of stuff to do in there.
Yeah, I feel like the big picture mode UI is actually like faster.
Streamlines it a little bit. A little faster.
Like just the animations as it shifts around and loads new things seems faster than the desktop.
Which is funny because it's not like the desktop one is very graphically intensive or anything.
I'll tell you,
a little bit bloated.
Maybe it's a lot of data. It's just got to pull a lot of data.
I wish I could find a way to qualify the journey, the process that took us from, Steam, that thing that came with Half-Life 2 that we all hate, to Steam, this thing I play almost all my games on. Like how does
that thing that kept us from playing Half-Life 2?
Yeah, that thing that kept Half-Life 2 from working to this thing that has become so much a part of the way I play games every day that it's second nature to jump straight into it.
Easy, and it was the easiest way to get hold of games.
Yep.
Like it stopped being crappy and started being functional.
Yeah.
And it made it easier to buy games off of Steam than to pirate them. So that's how it got its hooks in everybody.
I didn't have to put on my pants to go get a game.
Right.
Yeah.
It was easier. Definitely, like piracy was going nuts because it was easier than going to the store and buying a game, not necessarily because you wanted it for free. It's like, well, it's just easier.
It's just easier to go down there, download it, and go.
And then Steam was easier than that. So that was an obvious win.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure my entire college network was served by a single copy of Quake. I think there might have somebody bought one at some point.
So all right. So speaking of old games.
Yeah, old games.
Yeah. The good old games.
Those good old games.
Which GOG no longer stands for good old games. It's now just GOG.com. But they still have good old games, such as their System Shock Remastered Edition. I think.
Yeah,
that's it. Remastered.
I think it's remastered.
Yeah.
HD, I believe.
Or
System Shock
Edition.
Sorceress and Magical Edition. I believe it's called Enhanced Edition.
Enhanced Edition. That's what, because it is not actually remastered.
Yeah.
And they
slightly higher resolution.
Yeah, they tweaked a few things. They increased the resolution, and they added another resolution that allows you to play in a widescreen mode. And
a lower resolution.
Yeah, and they fixed some bugs, and they added built-in mouse look and allowed you to remap the keyboard.
I think it's GOG. Like GOG.
So GOG actually
they took
the code and they remastered it or.
Yeah, I don't actually have that information, but they have been known to do such things in the past. Like they have gone in and they've put games in DOS box wrappers. They've made adjustments to make sure they'll.
Ultima Underworld.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Make sure it runs on modern systems.
Yeah, those DOSBox wrappers are what make. If you guys aren't buying GOG, I assume a lot of people listening to this probably are. But if you don't go to GOG, check that place out. The DOSBox wrappers alone make the purchase price a steal, because by and large, you buy a game on GOG, it just works on your computer. And these are games that would take sometimes hours of beating your head against the wall to get them to start.
And I've been on an old school gaming kick, recently. We're playing Ultima Underworld, as I mentioned, going back to, not that old school, but going back to Skyrim and doing a lot of the mod and stuff too. And System Shock is actually a game I honestly never played the original. I played a lot of System Shock 2, never played the original, so actually I will go back and play that.
I'm really surprised.
System Shock came out in 1994, just for reference. And I never played it either. I actually, the first shock to my system was BioShock.
Oh, wow.
Really? So not even System Shock 2?
Yeah, I missed that one somehow.
It's great.
So
one of my favorite games
I'm surprised as an Ultima Online guy you didn't play it, though, because that was some of the same people. This is kind of the evolution of Ultima Online, which introduced this. Or, did I say Ultima Online? Yeah. Oh, goodness. Oh, Lord British, strike me down. Ultima Underworld, pardon me, not the same people did Ultima Online. Ultima Underworld, which was a out-of-the-eyes true 3D experience which had the ability to do, you can't see if you're on the audio, but head tilting up and down, peeking around corners. And then System Shock said you can build these truly immersive fake 3D worlds that you can walk through. And it took that Ultima Underworld system, put it on a space station, made you a hacker, put you up against an evil AI, and found ways for you to jump back and forth. It kind of had a link between worlds thing, where there was the real world and the cyber world, and you were going back and forth between the two of them. So you'd go all Johnny Mnemonic for a while, and then you pop back in, and that would open a door in the real world. And it was non-linear, exploratory, and it's such a great game.
I mean, it sounds very much, obviously, like System Shock 2. But that System Shock 2 was Irrational's first official game.
Right.
But a lot of that team has that same lineage from that Ultima Underworld team as well.
Yeah, they all just kind of flow in, and then from there kind of into Deus Ex, and there exactly. From there, it just keeps on going into BioShock.
Yeah, Deus Ex, and then into BioShock.
All great games. Yeah. Oh gosh, geez, Thief. But yeah, so I haven't gotten the new version yet. I have not bought Enhanced Edition.
It's $8 if you're interested.
I'm going to, because System Shock 2 I think is the superior game. There's tweaks you want to do to both of them. I'm interested to see what the bug fixes in System Shock are, because there are a couple of places that can be really irritating.
Yeah.
So I'm going to bet that that's what they addressed. But System Shock's absolutely worth your time even now. It is, however...
So you played both, right?
Yeah, I played both.
So what is again, I've never played the original. What's the linkage between the original?
Shodan is the main linkage. You remember Shodan? Okay, so, System Shock 2...
the evil AI.
Yeah, and System Shock 2, Shodan is the evil AI, and really is Atlas from BioShock. It's like, oh, look, it's my helpful mentor. No, it's not! System Shock, Shodan's much more overt. It's a simpler game, but that's the main connection. Same universe.
Very much like a survival horror game.
Absolutely,
in space,
yeah. It's
do
not.
They have brain monkeys that came
It's
after
not
you?
quite. I don't remember brain monkeys. They're cyborgs.
System Shock, So with System Shock 2, they had the.
Yeah, System Shock 2 feels more like BioShock. It's more horror-ish. This one has more of a. If System Shock 2 and Marathon had a baby, it would feel more like System Shock, maybe. And it's also, it was complex even for its time. Like now, you're going to be like, wow, there sure are a lot of ways to control things things in System Shock. It's a little less intuitive than you're used to. You have leans and kneels and all kinds of. So even back then, it was the opposite of intuitive. It took a while to figure it out. And in the era we were used to reading manuals, System Shock was a real head
That's
stretch.
back before video games really told you where your objective points were. I mean, they would tell you, but you maybe heard it once, right? Or you had System Shock 2 had a lot of audio logs in it where it would tell you,
right.
But it wouldn't necessarily put a point on your map or anything, right? You kind of had to remember those things or go back and listen to your audio logs.
System Shock
that's just how games were then.
And it's the same way. It's the logs and email system and things like that. But it isn't quite as horrific. It's more hackery. It's closer, like I said, to Marathon or Deus Ex in feel. Than the kind of survival horror in space. Yeah, it's absolutely worth your time. I believe System Shock 2 is a better game, but System Shock is still an exemplary video game. It really is.
Did you ever play Traveler?
The hand simulator?
No. Traveler. It was a.
I'm thinking of the Trespasser. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No. Trespasser. I think I wrote the review for Trespasser on IGN back in 98.
Are you talking about Traveler, the tabletop RPG?
The tabletop game. Yeah, the tabletop sci-fi space-based RPG.
Right.
System
TSR
Shock
made
always
it,
kind of made me think of that.
That's fair.
When I play, especially in System Shock 2, you can play as like a naval officer or a marine, and you kind of, have your career paths where you have different things. And Traveler, a side note, but Traveler was always a really cool tabletop game.
I like sci-fi tabletop games. I think they're a ball. Both space opera and hard sci-fi. There's good things you can do with each of them.
So Jared, I've never played System Shock. I'm familiar with the premise. I know about Shodan. Why should I go back and play that?
I think for two reasons. First, the history lesson part of it's fun. I subscribe to C.S. Lewis's theory that reading old books is equivalent to time travel. By reading an old book, you can discover the way people thought before you were there. You can get inside their heads because everything makes assumptions that they think everybody around them is familiar with. When you're reading them, you're not familiar with the assumptions. Therefore, you're acutely aware of them, and they teach you things about the era when that happened. System Shock is like that. It teaches you a lot about the way people were thinking about PC gaming at that time, especially in an experimental, hey, what's possible way.
Right.
So, one, as a history lesson, System Shock is a lot of fun. Second, it's a darn good exploratory shooter. Just positively solid. Frankly, it doesn't have the oomph that the middle of BioShock has, but I think it's a more consistent game, maybe, than BioShock in a lot of ways. I don't think it's not as good overall, but there's a lot of interesting stuff going on just about all the time. Not as much plot twisty, but a lot of good explore, find the nifty thing, discover a neat little nook, try something new.
How's the ending? Is it terrible like BioShock?
No, it's not. Okay. It's not terrible. Right. I don't want to spoil the end, but it's not terrible. It's not standout, but it's not terrible.
Right. Now I wonder if we'll see somebody come along now if this kind of takes off on GOG. And actually do a System Shock again, kind of like we had a Wasteland 2, right? Which was Wasteland was the progenitor of the Fallout series, and Fallout got super big, and then it's just kind of funny to go full circle and have kind of that same kind of similar isometric kind of game come out with Fallout 2, which was really good. They did a really good job with that. It'll be interesting to see if we can get another. I mean, Dead Space, I guess, was kind of a space. I mean, it wasn't anything. Well. I shouldn't say it wasn't anything like System Shock, but it was more of an action game than an RPG. But that was kind of that space-based horror, survival horror kind of setting. Very limited resources.
We've gotten that several times. There's all these little pieces of the lineage of System Shock out there. You have BioShock, of course, Under the Sea, but then you have things like what you were just pointing out, or you have something like Alien Isolation, which was flawed in a lot of ways, but carries that same kind of vibe. Now, granted, it's System Shock's kind of robbing the source material there and then coming back around, but still, there's some lessons from the design there that made it back into a game like Alien. Or Enemy Zero for the Sega Saturn, the survival horror game on a space station. Space stations are perfect. It may have been John Carpenter who said that space stations are haunted houses you can't get out of.
Yep.
Well, I mean, that's what when Ken Levine and the Irrational team were making BioShock, they actually said, we tried to think of an environment that would be just as confining as a space station, right? And they were like, okay, undersea kind of makes sense because you are kind of cut off from the rest of the world.
Right.
So that made perfect sense to me.
And it helps with the plot. There's no reason for you to just run away from the haunted house, and it helps with.
There's a reason. There's no ability to.
Right, but they also find you think about BioShock where you're like they come up with a way for you to see things that happened in the past, and System Shock 2, some of that same spooky stuff's going on. What's going on? It's like a ghost. I don't know. There's the really neat stuff there. Yes, System Shock 3 or something like it. Oh man, that'd be great! Like
it's
scary Deus Ex in space, totally.
Yeah.
You know,
It's
I
super
want that.
interesting to me that everything that was old is new again, right? And we're getting that renaissance. I mean, it's been happening for a little bit in the video game industry, but it's really happening quite frequently now. And I don't necessarily mind it as long as it's good experiences still, because I like you're saying, I like to show people the history of where we've come as an industry, and where these games came from. And I think it's really interesting not only to play like remastered versions or redone versions, but completely new versions that are based on that source material too.
I agree with you, and also the fact that they've found a way since then to kind of find ways to. I don't know if you want to get too heavy-handed with it, but you think about both BioShock and BioShock Infinite had heavily politicized themes. They were thematically politically relevant. There are interesting ways. Science fiction has always been a sort of a prophetic gateway to talking about social or political issues. A politically or ideologically charged System Shock game that's still horrific. I don't know if you set it on some kind of intergalactic refugee boat or something. There's a lot of ways you could make it work. That would be, or maybe that's a little too. Maybe I'm just not being a jerk. I'm not sure.
I don't know if we'll see an actual like System Shock 3 like we saw Wasteland 2, because I think the rights are I think they're in EA's hands.
I don't know. Well, EA sold back the rights to Wasteland, right? To In Exile and Brian Fargo. Yeah,
I didn't realize they owned it.
Yep. So that's why they went to Fallout.
Yeah.
That's why Interplay went to Fallout, because EA owned the rights to Wasteland, but they got the rights back. Same thing with Bard's Tale. EA had the rights to Bard's Tale. Brian Fargo and the In Exile team got the rights back to that. But we're seeing Ultima Ascendant as well, which is basically a redo of Ultima Underworld, or kind of that spiritual successor as well. So and I think that's actually a license that EA held. EA holds everything.
Yeah. You could also just create something called Crystal Lock 3, and or something like that. I don't know, Crystal Hawk. I don't know, Pistol Hawk 3. I don't know.
I think it was an '80s cartoon, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, probably so. That's they're starting to sound like porn names now. So.
All right.
I guess
next subject, Dan.
I guess it is. Yes, there is hope for wresting it from EA's grasp, as long as Disney doesn't get a hold of it. Disney never lets go of anything.
No, I think, but EA has actually been pretty good at letting go in recent years, because they know they aren't going to do anything. If they know they aren't going to do anything with it, I should say. Yeah. I mean, it is. These were all great games, so it's great to be able to not only relive them in their semi-original form, obviously with some updates, but then to really think about those kinds of the same universe and what you can do with that universe.
Yeah, GOG is a great way to buy games. And I think System Shock 2 is the must-play, but having this available in a much more accessible form, sure, I'm great with that.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Actually, there's a GOG Galaxy client now that's a little bit better. Oh, I meant to mention when we were talking about Steam. I noticed that I saw that Uplay updated, and now when you launch a game out of Steam, it won't like launch Uplay and make you push play on that. Actually launch. So that will help with the big picture mode.
Goodness.
So, yeah.
I want to make a fighting game where Origins, Uplay, and Steam just beat each other up.
Well, they fight each other on the battleground of the marketplace.
They do,
giving us all good deals and pushing each other to give us better customer support. All right. Well, with that, guys, let's wrap this up, shall we?
Yeah. Thank you for having me, Dan. I really appreciate the invitation.
All right, and for much more on PC gaming, come back next week to Overclocked and to IGN.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye.